my name is Sienna Pyle. I just graduated from the University of Delaware this past year, actually, with my degree in biomedical engineering. Now I'm at the University of Pennsylvania, getting my PhD. For those of you who aren't super familiar, maybe with like the different paths after university, a lot of people go into industry, or you can kind of go into academia. So I'm on more of the academia pathway, trying to figure out what to do there. My work mostly focuses on understanding the role of telomeres in human health, specifically cardiac health, and trying to figure out how we can kind of manipulate these biological processes to cure certain diseases associated with cardiac disease.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Hi, I'm Elena Escalas. Like she said, I am currently a SWE at Google. SWE, if you don't know, is SWE. It usually stands for software engineer. I just recently graduated from UCLA, where I was actually a part of the varsity women's swim team. So I was a Division I athlete on the swim team and then co-captained my last year. In college, I interned at Intel, Microsoft, and Amazon, and I currently work on Android TV. So it's Android development in Java for the Chromecast with Google TV. It was really fun to be part of like a big launch. So they launched the product. I tried really hard to get like one little change in before they released it, but in the update, there will be changes of mine because I started about 4 months ago.
Hey y'all, so I'm Madeline or Maddie. Like she said, I am a recent MIT grad. I actually graduated in February, so I guess in retrospect, really good timing. I'm currently a software engineer on Google Health, which is one of the product areas within Google. So I'm on one of the consumer teams. So that's been super fun. Yeah, so when I was at MIT, I was really involved in some like coding and non-coding things. So for example, non-coding wise, I was in an a cappella group and I did Model UN a lot. And coding wise, I did stuff like, for example, I was involved in, it's called Code It. It's basically a thing where I helped mentor middle school girls and taught them how to code over the weekends. And that was a really fulfilling experience. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I don't even know how to follow everyone's like amazing accomplishments so far. So I'm currently a junior studying electrical engineering with the focus in solar energy and power systems at Arizona State University. Not as prestigious at all, but I have a focus in solar energy. Like I said, I'm very passionate about it. And I started as a NASA intern in January of this year and worked on a spaceflight mission. So a solar panel I helped with is going to the moon one day, which is super exciting. So I'm really interested in that. Right now I'm going through all the interviewing processes, all that stuff for summer internships. So I actually find out in 3 days. So I'm so excited. But outside of school, I also sing. I sing and play guitar. So before COVID, I was going and I would play shows and like my university would like ask me to come and play and sing at events, which is like a really fun outlet to have. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. You're all really awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Sneha. I am graduating from Oregon State actually in the next week. I study industrial engineering and I'll be starting a full-time job at Deloitte in the government public sector doing business analytics, which would eventually, hopefully I'll become a consultant. And so last summer I had interned with Target. I'd done an operations management internship in their warehouse here in Oregon, which was super amazing, very different from what I'm about to do at Deloitte. But I think it's just like cool to have two very extremely different experiences. My field is really broad. So, I've definitely been the type of student to kind of try out a multitude of different things to find out what I really like. And outside of that, since the beginning of this pandemic situation, I helped found a media startup for and by women of color called Parachute Media. You can follow us on Instagram at the Parachute Media. And so I've been working on that for the last 9 months or so. It's been super incredible. I'm the chief operating officer there. So I do a lot of like organizational management, and I've gotten to apply some of the industry skills that I've learned at my internships and just in class as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. So again, thank you all for joining us. Let's move on to our first question. So how did you know what you wanted to study, and what was the decision process like behind your choice?
I can go first since mine's a little strange. I feel like for me, my dad kind of had us, like me and my sister, using technology a lot when we were kids. So we have like little videos of us as kids just like on keyboards and like doing a bunch of computer stuff. That's not to say that I like knew how to code. Like I never learned how to code before college. So I kind of decided, because I like to think that it's like I'm super interested in CS, but I think the biggest thing was just ambition for me. So it's like I wanted to do something that was hard, that not many people were doing, that had good job security. And also I really loved problem solving. I really liked math in high school, and I really liked the problem solving side of things. And also I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So computer science, you can pretty much do anything in terms of what industry you want to go into. So if I decided I was tired of tech, you could do something like be a software engineer for Estee Lauder or any company, because everything uses computers.
Kind of like you, Elena, my dad was a computer scientist. So I was like, I'm never doing that, because I like watched him do it. And I was like, no, because he would work like late nights all the time on the computer. He had like glasses, like his vision was like going. So I was like, I'm never going to do that. And I think I had a weird stigma of not being an engineer because of him, because I was like, oh, I'm not like my dad in that way. I was always good at math, but never like great. Like I always liked writing papers and like things like that more. So I didn't even get interested. I thought I was going to be a zoologist like my whole life until junior year of high school. And I took biology and was like, no, that's not happening for me. And I joined a robotics team on a whim, and that's actually what got me interested. So just trying a ton of experiences, because as I was doing that, I was like, oh, I really like problem solving. And you can build that skill. I feel like people think like you have to naturally be born to like problem solve and like always look at something, but it's like I could not have done anything. But when I started robotics, it's like I knew kind of how mechanical parts work together, and that's translated now into my electrical engineering career. And then I tried out different labs in college. Like it's all about trying things. So I originally was going to be an environmental engineer, but I tried a water lab and I was like, oh, I don't like water treatment, that's not for me. And then I got into a solar lab. That's where I found my passion. So don't be afraid to try things. That's my biggest advice to kind of get where you want to go.
Yeah, I think what Nicole's saying is 100% right. Like you should try everything that comes your way, because finding out things that you don't like is just as important as finding the things that you do like. My journey to engineering, I actually moved to Maryland from Hawaii when I was starting high school. And so I was kind of the new kid in school. So I was like, well, I guess it's time to like invent myself and figure out like things that I like. So I joined pretty much every club, and I found the ones that I liked the most were things like physics, Olympics, and chem team, which sounds very nerdy now that I say it out loud, but it was fun and really rewarding. And so I was ecstatic when I found out I could make that into a whole career, especially because I've always been interested in human health. Like, I think it's crazy that there are millions of reactions going on in your body at one time. And just one change there can cause major like diseases down the road. So I think it's all about finding things that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and things that just interest you. Like you should, I think it's really cool to have a job where you're excited to go every day. And that's how I feel about the research that I'm doing.
Yeah, it's really awesome. For me, I also, like what some of the gals before have said, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be before college. I actually was super into biology. Like I did a bunch of biology competitions, and that was something that really spoke to me. So I came into university being like, oh, like I want to be a biologist, which is, I guess, kind of ironic because my dad was a biologist, and the only career advice he ever gave me was don't be a biologist. But that was like mostly because he like did the PhD route, and he felt that like that was like kind of, he always was a math and physics person, but he chose biology because back then, in order to like immigrate to the US from China, like being a biologist was like the best course of action. So I guess he's like always had a kind of regrets. But the point is, like, he was like, you can do what you want, just like maybe not biology. So I was like, I'm gonna do biology. Then I got to university, and then I realized actually I wasn't the biggest fan of wet lab work. Unfortunately, even though I liked like reading the concepts, like kind of going into lab, I'm super clumsy. It wasn't a good experience. So I was like, okay, like what else can I do? And then I realized that all of my friends, like literally maybe like 95% of them were either math or computer science. So I was like, okay, like computer science, that sounds cool. I think I took one class in high school regarding computer science, but I wasn't too familiar with it. But I ended up taking some of the beginner courses, and I ended up really, really liking it. And I definitely agree, like finding something that you're passionate about and following that is definitely something super, super lovely. And for me in particular, something that really piqued my interest was I started taking some game design classes and some web dev classes. And those things really spoke to me. And I was really excited to be able to create like little prototypes or create like web apps. So yeah, now I'm here, and I'm a software engineer, and I think it's definitely a good decision, and it's one of the best decisions I made in my life. But yeah, definitely along the way, there were times in which I was really unsure of what I wanted to be. And I didn't know that I wanted to be a software engineer until rather late, I guess, but it worked out.
Yeah, I've had a very similar experience. In high school, I honestly just didn't really like school at all. And one of my favorite things, like one of the best parts of my personal like high school experience was actually doing speech and debate. So it's super random that I ended up picking engineering, but I think senior year or like near the end of my junior year of high school, one of my like family friends had a 3D printer, and he would like invite me over to check it out and go to like different maker fairs. Like I would go to the maker fair in our science museum nearby. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And then senior year, I took a Java class and got a little bit more kind of exposed to the world of engineering and technology. And so, yeah, but at the end of the day, I think it was pretty random when I picked engineering. Like obviously there's a aspect of job security, and just it felt like a safe bet. And the school I go to has a pretty large college of engineering with like 17 different engineering majors. So I literally picked a random one. I just picked like mechanical engineering right off the bat because I was like, I don't know, like this sounds fine, I think. And so, yeah, like my first year, I think the class that like really made me realize mechanical engineering wasn't it was SolidWorks, which is like AutoCAD. And when I took that class, I was just like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing this regularly or really ever again. And so that's kind of what led me to talking with my advisor and telling him like, I didn't really like this. Like, I feel like I'm not really an engineer. I struggled with like the hard maths and sciences in the beginning. But I kind of felt like determined to stay in engineering just because I really liked kind of the technology aspect and the problem solving aspect, and just nothing else really made sense. But yeah, it was a little bit of a process, but I learned about industrial engineering while working with my advisor, also just like while talking to my dad, and recognizing like it's a very broad field. So you can still do like really anything with industrial engineering, from working a corporate job to working in a warehouse, or, you know, even with more like technical engineering, like hands-on. And so I think as someone who didn't really know what I wanted to do after college, industrial engineering just felt like a really safe bet for me. And yeah, I think when I really realized I loved industrial engineering was near the end of my junior year, when I started taking more of like engineering management courses, which really start to bring out kind of the core theories of this major in this field. I really like identified with a lot of what I learned. So yeah, long story short, I it was kind of like a random journey, but I really love my major, and I always like tell anyone who is interested in engineering or kind of even like deciding between engineering and business, it's like a perfect kind of blend of both worlds. I always recommend this major just because it's like very relevant no matter where you go or what industry you're in.
Awesome. It was so interesting to learn how you all chose your paths in engineering. And I think definitely trying a lot of things and seeing what you're excited about is super helpful for discovering different interests. And diving deeper into this, what does your day-to-day life look like as an engineer, and how has that changed since COVID-19 and the pandemic?
Well, I've never gone to the office for my job. So I've been at home in Nashville, Tennessee with my family for pretty much the whole time. I graduated in June, and Google is not going back theoretically until July. We'll see. But they essentially just shipped me everything I would need, and I kind of took over my mom's office. Day to day, it's really nice because of the time difference. So everybody else on my team is Pacific time. So it's not the end of the world if I want to start like 30 minutes later, because they're not even awake yet. So I can't even ask them questions. So I'd say my typical day looks like before the pandemic, I got like a little Schwinn bicycle, like an indoor bike. I'm like one of those ironic cyclers who like drives 5 minutes away to go to like a cycling class. No cycling classes now, but I have a little bike, and I do like 30 minutes of cycling 3 times a week. And then I get breakfast and listen to a podcast. I like the New York Times Daily. It's called The Daily. It just like talks about daily news. And then I get to work. I usually have maybe like 30 minutes of meetings a week. Like it's very, very little. It's not too bad. So a lot of it is based on like what I want to do. And a lot of the times it was funny because early on, I knew that there were like employee resource groups that I should join, because then I could like develop a sense of community, because I'm pretty extroverted for an engineer. So I knew that I wanted to kind of make friends and have people to talk to besides my team. My team is 9 men, and they're not the most social. So I kind of reached out. It was funny because I joined these ERGs, and a lot of them are women's groups. So I joined all these women's groups. So I was like, wow, there's so many women here, because it was virtual. So the only people I was seeing was who I chose to see, and it was all the women. And then one time I went to a demo for one of our, like an Android TV demo, where they're demoing some of the things they've done. And it was like 42 people and 3 women. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then I stalked the maps and saw like any women who were sitting around me, and like did coffee chats with them, because I knew that once I got into the office, it might be a little intimidating to see everyone around me, being a man. I also started organizing kind of like a new grad social group. So we do socials. I probably have like almost more hours of of doing game nights with other Googlers than meetings. We do like, there's like an initial training group, and with that training group, we've stayed together and we've done some game nights too. So it's lots of fun. I think it's a little harder being virtual because you really have to like seek things out. But I really like what I'm doing. And I also really like that, I don't know, when I'm in the office and I have like people watching me, I feel like I have to work a certain way. And I really like bullet journaling. I think it's like a great mixture of like productivity and creativity. And I think if I were in the office, I'd be a little too embarrassed to be over there like drawing with markers. But when I'm by myself, it's really nice because I don't feel any of that external pressure.
That's so awesome to hear. You sound like you're settling in more than I am. I absolutely hate this whole, I mean, obviously everybody's not happy about it, but I'm also really extroverted, so that was really hard. But I'm going to kind of backtrack to, I started my NASA internship in January, and that came with a lot of expectations. Obviously, the pandemic was not even in the cards in my mind. So I've grown up in Arizona my whole life. So I moved to Cleveland. Like I found a great roommate. Like I was like, this is my year. Like I got a NASA internship, right? So everything was just like going like the perfect way. I found a friend group, like everything was great. And suddenly COVID started hitting. And I'm a very heavy, like hands-on person, being an electrical engineer and a solar researcher. So I'm always in the lab, like always the last person in the lab. Like I'm always like blasting music though, so it's not like boring. But so it was really hard because my work had switched 100%. So I had to suddenly go fully online, and NASA has a lot of like protocols and things like that. I couldn't just like take the things I was doing home because it's big machines there. So basically they were like, hey, you're going online, we'd like you to continue online. And I was like, how are we going to do that? Because I'm also working on writing a paper. So we had set like strict expectations of like, these are the data we have to get, but that's switched 180 and now too. So I switched from doing more like current voltage stuff, spectrometer stuff, to doing console multiphysics modeling, which is like SolidWorks, but the worst version. It's like so much physics and things that I just took physics 3, so it was a lot of learning on the fly and stuff, and it was really frustrating. But now I'm glad I did it, because I've learned double the skills, if you think about it now, because now I know more MATLAB, and I was doing a lot of coding and like more guessing of like what the numbers would be based on these equations and stuff. And that helped me like think in a different way. But it was definitely really, really hard for me at first, because I moved home, like, and I felt like I was having one of those like life moments where you're like, I'm the best version of myself. Like I was working on everything. And then I'm now doing college online, and so that's a completely different conversation. But it's been really weird. But my day-to-day used to be just like going to the lab. The first half of the day, I would read papers usually and kind of understand what I was doing and try to really know the finite details of what I was doing. And then the other half of the day, I would like go for my lunch break, and then I would do everything the rest like in the lab, like lab work. So that was what my day-to-day mostly consisted of.
Well, that's awesome that you're able to make the best of it despite all of the challenges, Nicole. That's really awesome to hear. Yeah, so for me, for context, so I graduated in February, but I actually did 2 internships before full-time. So I've never actually stepped foot in a Google office as a Google engineer before. So basically I interned at IBM spring semester and then Amazon in the summer. So it was interesting because the IBM one, I went from commuting, this is also my fault. I wanted to stay near campus and the office was a bit far away. So I like started off before the pandemic commuting literally like an hour and a half each way to the office and back. So I went from that to having 0 commute, like just like, you know, calling in from my bedroom. So that was a welcome change, I think, but it was definitely a bit weird to like not see people in person, but I guess I got accustomed to that later. Similarly for like Amazon, the internship, it was like fine, it was like chill. That one, like everyone already knew it was going to be remote. So there was like less of a hassle in the beginning, I guess, getting set up. So I appreciated that. So yeah, back to now like my day-to-day at Google. So yeah, like I've never been in the office before, but I've been to Elena's like game nights and like the Noogler coffee chat things, and she's done an excellent job in organizing them. So thank you. I've also been just like, I really like board games. So I play board games with a couple different groups of people at work, and that's always super fun. Also my particular team, a team and product area, we sometimes do events. So for example, yesterday we had a wreath making event where like we got shipped like little like herbs and like lavender and like flowers, and then we got like wreaths, and then the shop basically told us how to like put together our own wreaths. So like mine is drying there now. Also for me, basically every day I wake up kind of I try to wake up like earlier than I would otherwise, which would be like in the afternoon. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. And then mostly it's coding. I do have more meetings, I guess, sometimes, but I definitely, most of my time is definitely just like myself in front of my laptop working on code or calling other people to ask for help, basically. So that's, I think, a pretty good balance for me. I am, unlike some of the other girls, I'm a bit more introverted, so I do like having my own time to just like focus and get things done. Also, because everything is remote, right? Like I love running, so I'll like spend like an hour every day just like running and working out. So that's like something that I like that really helps me keep, I guess, balance between health and work, which I think is something super important. Yeah, I guess something else I've been doing is, so for Google, we have these like university recruiting events where you can sign up to volunteer to help lead like a usually like resume workshop or like Q&A or like a panel with universities around the US. So I've signed up for a couple of those, and that's been really, really lovely. I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is because everything is remote, these events, which would have otherwise probably taken like an entire, like a couple hours up to like multiple days, I can actually just do them, you know, for an hour in my house. So for context, like I've volunteered a couple of times for events to the University of Puerto Rico, MIGAs. So that apparently usually would have been like, literally would fly there for like a week and like host these workshops. So again, as a nuclear, I probably wouldn't have jumped for that just because like I don't want to tell my manager, oh, by the way, I'm going to be gone for a week. So yeah, in normal times. But now that we're allowed, you know, everything is virtual, it's been really lovely being able to hopefully make the same impact while having it be more convenient where I can just like Google call from my house. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing day to day. And again, as an introvert, it's been okay, but I obviously do miss in-person human interaction sometimes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I could go next. For me, I mean, I'm still in school, so a lot of my time has been focusing on just finishing up my classes, but also with my startup, usually I'll have a few meetings a week. So yeah, I'll like usually have a few meetings a week and work on some stuff individually throughout the week, as well as like just getting my assignments done and whatnot. In terms of habits, I think earlier in the summer, or like even earlier in the pandemic, I was definitely trying to maintain a lot more of like healthy personal habits in terms of like doing yoga and reading. But I'm not gonna lie, like I've definitely like fallen into more of like just being lazy and scrolling on Instagram. So I'm not, yeah, I mean, like that happens. I think that's just the nature of where we're at right now with the pandemic. But one thing I do try to do is I've set kind of like goals for myself to accomplish before the end of the year. Those goals are like not like academic goals or productive goals, but I've been trying to put more energy towards self-care, like genuine self-care, not just like, oh, I'm going to take a bath with a bath bomb, but more of like, what are things that are really like fulfilling to me, that those things, you know, especially like in engineering, I think the things that we are often likely to sweep to the side first are things that actually make us really happy. So I am definitely trying to prioritize those things a little bit more. Especially as I now will have like a couple of months before I start my job. Just things like, for me, those things include like painting, reading, you know, just like the very usual things that you enjoy doing, but then you're like, oh, I don't have time because I'm super exhausted from all these assignments and whatnot. So I definitely recommend everyone to kind of sit down and make a list of maybe like 3 or 4 things that you always tell yourself you want to do, but you don't make time for, and try and make time for those things. But yeah, other than that, usually like my day-to-day, like before the pandemic, used to be super busy because I worked 3 different jobs on campus. Usually like all of them were in the College of Engineering. So I was an ambassador for the College of Engineering, which means that I would give tours and meet with incoming students or prospective students. and just tell them about our university and also kind of provide support and answers and things like that. I also was an intern at our Center for Diversity and Inclusion on campus. And so I loved that job so much because I got to work with different student groups. You guys might know there are tons of like affinity organizations for engineering. So anything from like the Society of Women Engineers to the National Society of Black Engineers. And I think we have 10 groups total like that. So I work really closely with them and other underrepresented students in the college. We would put on like different events and like do different campaigns on campus. So that was like a very much like time consuming, but really fun thing for me to do on campus. And then I was also the president of our engineering student council. So kind of just working with all of our different engineering clubs and managing our budget and all that. Like I loved being involved on campus. I think like if you're gonna be on campus, I think it's just different like in the virtual world, but it's just the best way to kind of get leadership experience, teamwork experience, and also just to put your name out there. I think like, especially as a woman of color, like it's very valuable to make those connections and work on your network and be noticed kind of in the college among other students as well. So yeah, my day-to-day used to be a lot busier, but right now I'm just kind of like taking it day by day and yeah, just getting ready to start working soon.
I'm making my list of 4 things that I want to get done now. My old day-to-day, well, I guess I should start off saying I have been working in research labs for about 4+ years now. I started in undergrad where I worked on the vascular system. Now I'm working on the cardiac system. And one of the great things about working in a research lab is that your schedule is really your own. So one of the things I always do is I just make a list of things that I need to get done, and then I kind of just do them on my own time. I'm personally a night person. I cannot wake up early to save my life. So I'm very grateful for the 0 time commutes now. So I would go in around, noon, stay until whenever I finished everything that was on my list, while still doing classes and being involved in organizations on campus. One thing I'll say, since moving to a new institution, as well as kind of moving into COVID times, I've been able to kind of step back from a lot of those leadership roles and different organizations I've been a part of, and really establish more of my professional career, which has been really nice, kind of thinking about my goals and where I want to go. Right now, things are still pretty flexible. I still go into the lab most days. They've instituted kind of like satellite testing. So you get tested for COVID once a week. As long as you are negative for that and you're maintaining social distancing, I'm still able to go in, which is great because I'm just starting out. So it's not like I have a lot of stuff to do from home right now. So I would say I spend about 20 hours a week in the lab, probably 20 during classes. So right now I'm basically just a full-time paid student, which is awesome. If you're thinking about a career path where you can just keep learning, I would highly recommend looking for PhD options. And then when I get home, I try really hard not to give myself more screen time, because I don't know about you guys, I feel like at the end of the day, I'm like a zombie. I can't look at any more screens. So I've been getting really into board games. My self-care activity of quarantine was I adopted a cat. So that's been pretty awesome. If he comes in, I'll lift him up to the camera. And I've also picked up like a lot of fun crafting things that I never had time for. So like now I'm an embroidery enthusiast, which is pretty fun. yeah, Nicole. Okay. So I've been making a lot of science embroideries, which I'll also try to dig up maybe. But I think like, yes, it really stinks like not being able to kind of like see people and be a part of like different communities. But I think like using this time to really kind of like look into yourself and figure out like what you want and how to get there. It's been a pretty good opportunity to do that. So.
Awesome. I think the pandemic has definitely been a big adjustment. I like how you all mentioned like Google game nights, self-care, embroidery, and making time for hobbies. I think that's really important for this time. Connecting back to the mission of Girl Genius with empowering female changemakers, it's prevalent that there is a visible gender gap between men and women in STEM fields. So I'm curious to know, what challenges have you faced as a woman or minority in engineering, and how have you been able to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, I can think about certain times where being a woman has really impacted people's view of me in the engineering field, which is absolutely crazy. And one thing I will note is that usually the people who gender matters to tend to be older. And luckily, like I know, especially my field of bioengineering is a little bit newer. So we have a lot of younger people kind of in it. So I would say that the bioengineering community as a whole is very accepting. And I think like the ratio in my classes was about 50-50. We had a lot of awesome women faculty members who were really strong and passionate. And we're also able to pursue things like motherhood, which in the past I feel like was seen as a stigma. So I think that things are definitely changing. That being said, I know I've come in contact with some people who, for instance, I had one instructor who refused to meet with me one-on-one about a project, would only meet with us if my male partner was there, or he would only meet with my partner one-on-one. So I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. And you know, well, it doesn't happen often. Like whenever something like that happens, it really stands out in your mind, you know, because it is really unfair. And I think that it's important to note that like just by being a woman in engineering and being visible, like that is so powerful and important. I think even looking back like 30 years ago, the ratios that you might have seen in classes were so disproportionate compared to now. And I will also say, I think there are a lot of organizations that are trying to push for greater equality. So like I was a part of a woman in engineering sorority in college, which was awesome. And we put on a lot of events to try to like get more women interested. I think there's been more pushes to just like, you know, encourage women to go into these fields, which I think is awesome. So, well, there are some people who are still problematic. Like things are definitely changing. And I know that we're all a part of that. So give yourself a round of applause.
You're so sweet. I first want to say thank you guys for like putting this together. Like Girl Genius as a whole, it has like such a large community that you're impacting. So you guys are inherently like boosting people like us or other people in the fields, which is really helping younger girls. And so I really, really do appreciate that. And going back to the pandemic like situation, didn't really have a media presence, I guess. Like I wasn't like an engineering like person on like Instagram. I just kept it kind of normal, casual until COVID, to where that's when I realized like we can build these online communities. We can build communities because I was spending so much time on social media, especially like TikTok and stuff. And so I'm like, well, maybe throw in some educational content, which led to me doing like educational women in STEM videos about solar panels and things like that, and like switching my Instagram. And I've made like a ton of friends, like networking and things like that through Instagram. Like I just interviewed for Lockheed Martin and I made a friend through Instagram, and I was like, oh, I just interviewed, like I hope I get the internship. And she's like, oh, who is your interviewer? And I like said the name. She's like, that's my friend. Yeah, I'm gonna go talk to her and like tell her to give it to you. Like things like that. That's like crazy, but like that is like women like lifting other women. Like that's how we all need to build that community and be with each other. But something I faced within my university, more so than in industry, NASA, which was so weird, everybody was so like humble to be there. Like everybody's like, I don't know how I got this internship. Like everybody felt the same like imposter syndrome, like men and women. I never got any comments from the guys. They were like, yeah, you're smart, or like they would say things like that. And so it was really nice to have a community of men there. And my boss was men, and he was not like mean or anything. Like I didn't feel discriminated against at all in industry. So I had a really positive experience. That being said, at my university, I think there's also a different facet of being a woman, but also being a feminine woman that kind of comes into engineering. I feel like Sienna might be able to relate with being in a sorority or something like that. For some reason, there's like this internalized misogyny sometimes going around that since I'm wearing makeup or since I like to dress up a lot and wear dresses and heels and stuff, it's like, oh, you're not smart. Oh, you're not good at math. It's like kind of a weird disconnect. And it wasn't from other women, but it would be like a group quiz in my classes. And I would be like, hey, this is what I got. Like, what'd you guys get? And they would just like blatantly ignore me, like blatantly. Like, so it's, or like there's like two guys and they would turn to each other. It's like things like that I've experienced where I'm like, are you just like socially awkward because we're electrical engineers, or is it because I'm a woman? So I'm not really sure. But I had a professor one time who a girl walked into class and she just like looked around, and this was like an engineering building, first off, I want to say, but she came in, she looked around, and then she walked out. Obviously she just like walked into the wrong room, okay, whatever. And he was like, oh, a girl sees we're doing engineering and she runs away. The professor said that, and it was me and another girl in the class, and we like looked at each other, and all the guys in the class, like their mouths were like gaped open, like everybody was like, did he just say that? Or like he would always like be very like outward about it. And like one time he would hold like review sessions, but I also hold a lot of jobs and things like that on campus. So I was in his office hours one time, and he was like, well, why couldn't you go to my review session? And I was like, well, that wasn't a time that worked for me, so I came to your office hours to figure it out. And he was like, oh, well, last time I saw you working, you were giving a tour to people on campus. And I was like, so what does it matter? Like, I was like, what? Like, what am I supposed to say to that? And I was like, well, I moved out of my house when I was 18 and I have to put myself through college. So please, like, I'm like, what do you want from me? And I shouldn't even have to justify myself like that. So since then, I haven't had any professors. I'm lucky to say that's like was a really rare case, but it was just about not letting him like deter me or deter my drive and being like, okay, bye. And now it's really funny because I work with the advisors and like I'm really close to a lot of people in the EE school. So him and I will be at like the same events, and I'll be like a student ambassador, and I'll be like, hey, like just like look at how good I'm doing. Like, you know, it's like not to be petty, but you just really gotta like not internalize it and just like use it to push yourself harder.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm trying to think of like which things, like industry versus school. And I think there wasn't anything in my university that was like blatant, but I think it was just always like an unconscious bias that I even had myself, where I looked around and I saw that nobody looked like me. Like we are, like UCLA doesn't have affirmative action. So there's nothing that, it's like 95% Asian men. So it's like you walk into class and nobody looks like you. I think sometimes with the stares I got, it did look like people thought I was in the wrong class. I remember there was one time, I think that like me going in not looking like everyone else and also going in with zero programming experience was like a double whammy, because I would be in class and also being out of state too. I felt like a lot of my classmates knew each other. It was kind of like these groups of guys that also there's like rampant cheating at UCLA. So it would just be like, how am I supposed to compete on this curve with like a bunch of guys who knew each other since they were little, started coding when they were 12. It was definitely very intimidating, but it was nice because after those introductory classes, it started getting into things that weren't necessarily things that these people had been doing since they were 14. So it's like general coding people do, but generally things like operating system principles, they're not really learning when they're little. So it definitely like evened out a lot later on. I think when it comes to industry, I've had some really good companies and then some really kind of, I want to say bad managers, but I think it's also like the company kind of perpetuated it. I had one manager say like, it was kind of like they kind of gave up on me after the beginning. So usually you get code reviews, which means that they review your code and tell you how you can make it better. I got 0 code reviews. The guy sitting next to me at my internship had one-on-ones with my manager every week, and he didn't like do them with me. So it was kind of like they just decided at the beginning that I wasn't good enough and just kind of let me struggle on my own, was kind of how that worked. Some of the bad things were like, well, some people are just naturally better at this and some people have to work harder. And I was like, and then I actually ended up not getting a return offer from the internship. And when they were telling me that, they said, oh, well, your soft skills are so good, you should try becoming a product manager. And I was like, just because my soft skills are good doesn't mean I should probably change what I'm doing. I think a lot of people have told me that I would make a good product manager, but now I'm so stubborn that he said that you have good soft skills. It's like, why can't a software engineer have good soft skills too? One of the things that bothered me a lot was I really like companies that focus on growth. I know Google and Microsoft in particular really focus on like a growth mindset and learning and how important it is to learn. And then we'll just say it was Amazon, but Amazon, it was like, they didn't really value my growth and like how much better I got. They said it was a difficult decision because my growth was like this. And I was like, did you just draw an exponential curve? Like, and that still wasn't good enough. So I think it's just a lot of it is like company culture. Of course, not every team has the same culture as the company. I think there are a lot of really amazing teams at Amazon. I think it was just mine where there was just a lack of kind of communication. I definitely felt like I was proud of myself because I stood up for myself because I had done 2 internships before. So I really knew what this was supposed to be like. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me this earlier? And they're like, well, what? You could have just read a book or something? And I was like, so you didn't think I could improve at all? I think if it were something where that was more than 3 months, I might have kind of contacted people. But for the most part, they kind of made me feel like it was my fault that I just wasn't good enough at Python and my code quality in Python wasn't very good. And it's like, well, you never looked at it or helped me at all. So I know one time I asked for feedback and they said, we do not have enough data to provide you with feedback. So it's just kind of ridiculous, some of the things that I went through, but now I'm really happy with my current manager. I see sometimes there are people in meetings and they might say like a general he pronoun for everyone. And then I saw the next week that he started using he or she. So that was really nice. I see a lot of people correcting themselves because before I joined the team, it was all men. So it's easier for them to say like his code or anything like that. So it's really nice to see people actually like making a concerted effort to make me feel more included.
I can share a little bit of my experience. I think kind of similar to the rest of you, obviously, like I've definitely experienced just like a hyper awareness of being different from your peers. And that just, I mean, it comes with the territory, not only of being like a woman in engineering, but also being a woman of color. And my university is 80% white. So definitely like did not see really anyone that looked like me or that I related to in my classes until I really started like going out of my way, like working in the Center for Diversity and Inclusion and like specifically meeting students of color in engineering. And even when I graduated, you can see my like class composite picture. And I'm literally like one of like, maybe there's one other woman of color in my major or in my like graduating class in my major. So, I mean, those are definitely things like I haven't like experienced anything like majorly discriminatory, but there have definitely been so many situations like in my job and in class of just being tokenized or being kind of like put in a position where you're made to feel like kind of even gaslit, where you're like, okay, wait, was that kind of like racist or sexist, or like, am I just overthinking it because I'm so aware of being the only woman of color here? So there's definitely been like situations like that. At my last internship, like I said, it was in a warehouse. So you can imagine it was very like hyper masculine. There were barely any women there, and it was also in a really like rural white part of Oregon. And so definitely experienced some like weird things there. even just like overhearing the managers talk about like the other women in the office, like the one other woman of color in the office, and just like really noticing those things, but not being like really, I mean, as an intern, you're not really going to be like picking fights or like, you know, saying anything about it. Although I personally like did feel empowered, like just by my manager to like talk to him about it and like point things out to him specifically, just like between the two of us. So I was like grateful for that. But I mean, it kind of made me realize that, you know, this is something that really matters to me. And I think, like you mentioned before, company culture does matter a lot. I think it matters a lot to not only to like speak to your own experience, like being valued and feeling safe, but also just like, why would you want to work somewhere that doesn't, you know, treat everyone equally, that doesn't provide like equal respect and opportunity? And that's a huge reason why I decided to work with Deloitte, was because from the very first day that I met the recruiter at our career fair, it was really clear that they genuinely care a lot about D&I. And actually, my dad also works at this company in a different sector, but just hearing his experiences, they do talk about D&I. They actually do work in the community, and they are actively like doing a lot to support women. One of the things that I really appreciated about this company is that, so like I think everyone has had this fear of like, oh my God, like how am I going to negotiate my salary? It's something that everyone like talks about, especially for women. But this company that I'm working with, they actually have a standard pay scale. So there's like no need to negotiate and everyone gets paid the same. And the reason why they actually do it is to avoid gender and race disparity with pay. So I thought that was really like a perfect example of like ways that they are trying to promote equality and like inclusion in the company. And I think those are things like you are allowed, like you should be empowered to ask those questions at your interview, to demand like answers and perspective from people who work at that company, from your recruiter. Those are things that you should feel empowered to ask and shouldn't feel afraid. Because I think personally, I used to kind of feel afraid to even bring it up because it's like, oh, you don't want to be seen as that woman that has an issue with everything, you know, and always has something to say. But I think like, honestly, who cares? Like, it's your life, it's your career, and you should feel empowered to ask the right questions that matter to you and make your decision based off of that. And people should look at you as someone who is like, I mean, if you care enough about your company and your team, like these are things that do matter, and they, you know, are valuable parts of being a good employee or being a good manager, whatever it might be. So long story short, I think like, yes, obviously we've all like experienced these things. I think the biggest thing that I experience like regularly is just imposter syndrome. And, you know, men experience it too. Everyone experiences imposter syndrome. So it's really just understanding like just looking at the bigger picture and taking it all in perspective. You know, you made it here. You made it to where you are, as did everyone else. Like you earned your place here. That's something I always remind myself, is that you earned your spot here, as did everyone else. And it's not like a fluke. And so kind of just reminding yourself of that and empowering yourself to, I know I've said the word empower a lot, but it really is like a daily process of just reminding yourself like, yeah, I got this, like all of that. So that's my 2 cents on that. I rambled a little bit.
Yeah, so to add on to what everyone else has been saying, yeah, so basically for me, I think I've been really lucky in that because I went to like a rather like prestigious when it comes to computer science school. I think for me in industry, like I've never explicitly had anyone who like assumed that I didn't know things, even though, okay, like I don't know things, but that's like separate from like who I am as a person. But anyway, I've never had anyone like be mean to me or like be like talk down to me or do anything like that. So I recognize that that's a luxury that's not afforded to many women in STEM. So that's like something I am very grateful for. Yeah, and then as for in school, like at MIT, I think we are interesting in that like almost everyone is STEM. Like I think like 40% of us are computer science. Computer science, if I remember correctly, like it's actually rather like almost 50-50 when it comes to like male-female ratio. But so like as for me, I never took any particularly like high, like really advanced classes. So I have heard that in those classes, like in the more math heavy ones, there definitely are like very few women compared to men. And sometimes like I've had friends who are women who have taken these classes and have experienced discrimination or experienced like snide comments because of who they are. But I guess for me personally, I've been lucky in that all my classes are mostly like actually 50-50-ish% guy girls. So I've never really, as far as I know, I've never really had any bad experiences because of the fact that I'm a woman. So like that's like definitely something that I feel that I've been really lucky to avoid, because I know that's like definitely not the case for many women in the industry and in classes. Yeah, so I guess just in general though, like I am really passionate about trying to make it so other people also experience the same thing, so like they don't have adverse like things when it comes to being a woman in STEM. So for example, like I mentioned before, I was a mentor for Code It, so I helped teach girls how to code. I went to Mexico for a week for this program called Patronas Amorosas, which also was like teaching middle school and high school girls for me particularly in Aguascalientes, Mexico, how to code. And I think that's like just something that's really fulfilling and something that I personally very passionate about, because even though I recognize that I'm lucky and that I have never experienced as much discrimination as a lot of people have, like that's definitely not the case, and especially in underrepresented communities around not just the US but around the world, there's definitely a very big discrepancy in how women are treated versus how men are treated in like computer science and STEM in general. Yeah, just like I really would hope that we continue, like people mentioned before, there's been great progress, and I really hope that we can continue this trajectory and make it so that people don't have to fear that they are being discriminated against because of who they are. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. It was great hearing all of your responses and the different experiences you faced. So since it's around our ending time, I think we can wrap it up from here. Again, a huge thank you to Sienna, Maddie, Elena, Sneha, and Nicole. It was super insightful to hear about your experiences in engineering and beyond. Thank you everyone who attended our panel as well. I hope it was just as helpful to you as it was to me. So thank you guys for coming. I'll end the panel from here. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having us.